Here we go. It's the monthly Portland pod. I hope you're all doing well. J Mac here, working through the mire that is like the real off season where there's no summer league, where the trade shots have been shot. Um, there's just not a lot of basketball to watch. You go down the YouTube wormhole with some of your players to try and spruik your excitement, but it's not like the real thing. So we just got to get through. It's tough. It's tough on all of us not having our teams to build and cheer for. We will get through. And the three things I'm covering today, the first one, which relates to my first point about the dark, cold off season, is community, which I think is actually hitting possibly a high watermark in the 5 years we've existed, which is pretty awesome considering how great and how immersed everyone's been in the league. So, state of the community, comment on the Portland trades that have gone through since I last spoke, which is two or three, some pretty decent size moves. And then with the last little bit, a way too early playoffs picture, the way too early, effectively like a power rankings. The community. So normally this point in the off season, there's not much conversation at all. There's not much connection, which would be understandable. But at the moment, there's real enthusiasm to talk across different threads on Discord, and I think that's not typical for our league. I think some people do really like zone out, and that's a really good thing. I tried to do it, couldn't do it. So I'm still lurking around, but there's still lots more people online than we would expect at this point in the cycle. So it's really cool. And I think the new GMs have played a really big part in that. And I think the majority are from the US. So I've noticed something funny about like the alternating news cycles, that the Aussies sort of dominate Discord at our waking hours, and then I'll wake up and there's 3 or 4 channels that have got some new content to look through, courtesy of the Americans or maybe Lattice on night shifts as well, who have different waking hours. So it's been really good. It's getting me through the quietness. Trade talks might have stopped, but people are still sharing NBA information or commenting on the World Cup soccer, or just sharing general basketball memes, or talking about life in the live thread and people on holidays and things of that nature. And it's just really cool. It's the closest sense of community I think we've reached, that we care enough about each other and I guess the state of our league that people want to share information, people want feedback, people want acknowledgement, people want to converse and connect. And it's really cool because I think it just adds extra significance to winning. I think it adds to the richness of like trade talks and people who make pods and write articles. And I think it's symbolically really good for the league that you've got active GMs when there's nothing they have to do. They still want to be active. They want to see games. They want to keep trading. They want more content. I just think it's so good for the quality and the state of our game. So hopefully we can keep 2K can keep up the bargain and let us back in. But we'll find a way, because as long as people are committed and having fun and wanting to create friendships or at least working relationships with people, I mean, it's going to be a great league. So kudos to everyone not just the people who are the ones who talk a lot, but you can just tell there's extra commitment. There's always 10 or so people online, it seems, which is a third of the league, which is really, really exciting. So Portland, since we've last spoken about a month ago, we completed 3 trades in very quick succession. They were, in fact, within 60 hours or so, 2.5 days. Melton didn't stay here long. Minnesota had a dire need for a point guard who can do a lot of complementary things. Didn't dominate the ball too much, can play defense, can shoot, can pass, and Melton can do all of those things. And really good player in the NBA. So hopefully he gets his dues in 2K, and the Wolves paid for that. I took a gamble that Chris Dunn gets his deal guaranteed, and he'll probably give me exactly the same as Melton, but less of a trade asset. So that was just my thinking. Will it pay off? I don't know. I've heard some people say good deal for me, bad deal for me, which probably means it's great trading when it's not a landslide one way or the other. It's probably a good indication it's a good deal because it's worked for both teams. Same sentiment with the Utah Jazz. Kispert had a lot of wing depth. Kispert ended up going to the Utah Jazz, who wanted that tall shooter in their lineup. We almost sent them Melton, but then we renegotiated around Kispert for pretty much the same price. So it was Kispert going there. They dumped Amir Coffey's salary to the Kings. And Kings got some second rounders to swap firsts with ourselves. Pretty much a first, second, McBride for Corey Kispert. So I was really, and Ben will probably chuckle at this, was really excited to see what Kispert can do on my team. And in the NBA, he finished really strong last season. Alas, I'll have to watch him in a Utah Jazz uniform. So we just figured we had Levert, we have Reddish. I like Ty Jerome off the bench with his size. I could just replicate a lot of the same things. Well, I hope that's the theory. So, look, it was a little bit trading for the sake of trading because, yeah, I do have impulse control issues with always seeking out trades. But I think it's okay. It's low risk, so we'll see what happens. And Miles McBride, who'll just be my third stringer. Funnily enough, the only reason I even asked Utah Jazz about him during the regular season is my son's name's Miles. My surname starts with MC. I'm not sentimental in this game, but that name, seeing Miles Mack, I asked Jace a few times and nothing really happened. And then that was his pitch for our initial talks was like, hey, you'll get Miles McBride in this deal. So well done to Jace for remembering that meant something to me. And yeah, hopefully he'll just sit at the end of my bench and I get to see the name that I love so much. So that concluded the Utah Jazz deal. And then, look, I was okay with the state of the roster. As I said, I've got Ty Jerome, who I could play backup point guard. I had Chris Dunn. I had an $8 million trade exception that was just sitting there. And all I did was look at across the teams about who would be a candidate for that size contract, who I could maybe lift up their performance with the personnel that I have. Once again, all on paper, all in theory. And started at the bottom alphabetically and ended up last on the Hawks and just almost missed him, but just noticed two things that the Hawks had so many point guards, like good point guards, and that Hayes was fifth or sixth on their depth chart. So it would make a lot of sense for them to explore moving a point guard. And I didn't really have any players to offer. So I just said, hey, mate, I've got a trade exception. Hold on one sec. Sorry, we're back. Minor interruption. What was my train of thought? Killian Hayes. So by all accounts, he's terrible in the NBA. Has good size, good physicals, can play D, can pass. So that was enough for me to take a gamble. Couple of seconds. Price was fine for me. Hawks, they were happy to sort of clear up some of the logjam and gives them some more assets to work with, and they get the big trade exception. Look, he's been on a shitty team in the NBA, the Pistons, but he's not in a shit situation in the NSL. So we'll see what happens with. We'll see what happens with him in the NBA. But even as a 1 year low risk guy with some size, he'll be really good off the bench, I think. So we'll just see what happens. Hopefully he's hungry and hopefully he gets moved from Detroit. So the second half of this, I was just looking at the way too early playoff rankings, and I hadn't and I hadn't written them down yet because I wanted to sort of think my way through it in real time. So God, imagine recording a pod at work and getting interrupted. Hey, that's so selfish. So, um, concluding the trade summary, I guess for us, we felt we could cover some of the depth that we lost. The pick prospects aren't all that great, but it's just a more fluid, flexible asset, I guess. And I also think it's just idle hands. Just got a bit bored and itchy trigger finger, and just had to make something happen and chase that gratification. So I'm looking at the standings, and we'll start with the East first. So I'm looking at last year's standings, but I'm just thinking of the state of the teams off the top of my head, and I've got Bucks in first. This won't be in any exact order, but I mean, Bucks are a lock for the playoffs. Washington, a lock for the playoffs. Boston, lock for the playoffs. New York, playoff team. Who else do we have in that top five? Toronto, Chicago, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Miami, Orlando, Detroit. I'm going to go Toronto in that fifth spot. I think they're getting slept on. They got a lot younger, but I think they've still got it. We've got Indiana next. And then we get into that play-in territory, which I would find. Maybe Cleveland should be higher. Let's just go. They can tag onto that tier above, but someone's going to have to play the play-in. So I've got Cleveland at seventh, or that second tier. Bucks a lock, Washington a lock, Boston a lock, New York a lock. And these teams, I think, are flirting with the play-in. Toronto, Indiana, Cleveland. Put Charlotte in that. Put Philadelphia in that. God, there's going to be some good teams missing out. Brooklyn, maybe? Brooklyn in that 10th spot, but that's leaving Orlando, who, if Zion's healthy, should be a playoff team. That's leaving Miami. If Simmons is back, they finally should be able to show that sort of size and that defensive dominance. Damn, the East is so balanced. Detroit, Sheed, a master behind the controls. He's done the pivot, the little tank, and like his team even looks pretty good. And then we've got Atlanta and Chicago. But even Chicago, what they've got Mikal Bridges, Claxton, LaMelo Ball. That's crazy. Atlanta and who have I missed? Chicago. Wow. And Atlanta still have Dame. Far out. The East, there's absolutely no chance I've got the East correct. It's just the locks: Bucks, Washington, Boston, New York. The next tier, I've got Toronto, Indiana, Cleveland, Charlotte, Philadelphia. I'll probably leave it there. And then Brooklyn, who should have a lot to prove. Orlando, Miami, Detroit, Atlanta, and Chicago. But even if Chicago are the worst team in the East, damn, that's going to be a tough battle. And I guess that's what's happening in the league, why they're talking about expansion, because there's so many good players, so much talent to go around, and that's good for all of our teams that there's enough building blocks around the league to work with for everybody. Onto the West. So we've got, San Antonio, a lock. The Giannis's, Portland. Well, hopefully, if my guys stay healthy, I'll be with LeBron and KD at least for a season or two. I'll be fantastic on the court. The Grizzlies, fantastic team, shitty accountant. It's a big debt. I think Rootsy knows what he's doing. We've just entered a new era where financial implications have a lot more restrictions and a lot more, I suppose, detriment to staying at certain levels over the tax, which I don't think any of us fully comprehend or know yet the impact it's going to have. But it's there, it's looming, and it's already going to take effect with our teams this year. So I got Grizzlies a lock for the playoffs. The West is a lot easier. I feel like the last 2 or 3 years, the teams have probably been the same. Minnesota round out that standard top four with, Davis and Butler, both 94 plus. That's very scary. That's one of the best duos in the entire league, and a guy who just really wants to win. OKC finished 50 wins already, and I think they've added Trey. Edwards gets his bump. The rest of the team's very similar. Chet never even played for them. I'm going to have OKC in fifth spot. I've got Denver. Oh, man, Utah. Forgot about them. So let's just make another tier. So I'm going to say the top four are a lock. The next teams. Oh, sorry, New Orleans. I mean, they're going to be back with a vengeance. So OKC, New Orleans, Denver, Utah, Houston. Phoenix, Lakers, Phoenix, probably even a bit higher. I don't know. It's really league wide. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's probably 11 teams who really want to be in the playoffs and think they would be deserving. So 11 teams. And I'd say, depending on how Andrew's feeling, Clippers could make that 12. I've got Golden State and Sac and Dallas on the outer in the West. The East still is like, looking at the list, we've got any of the 15 teams could make that the top 10, including the playing spots. Whereas the West, I've got Spurs, Portland, Grizzlies, Minnesota, a lock. OKC, New Orleans, Denver, Utah, Houston, Lakers in that next tier. Utah, that team is amazing, as is Denver, as is Houston. Lakers and Phoenix a bit more up and coming, but really talented teams. Yeah, so there's probably at least 12 teams vying for the 8 spots, and in the West, sorry, and I'd say there's 14, 15 teams even in the East. I don't think Chicago have any incentive to lose. I don't know if the Hawks have their pick. What it means, though, is winning games really matters. Engagement should be high. A lot of the teams who would benefit from losing don't have their picks, so it really should be 30 teams trying to win as much as they can, which is really, really exciting for the state of our game. So I'll mull on that a little bit more. I'm sure there'll be some early power rankings that come out. Maybe I can contribute some of my thoughts to that. But otherwise, yeah, happy trading, happy resting, happy off season. Keep yapping. Yeet. Just, it's great. Share content. You've brought so many people into the conversation with your performance. So best of luck to everybody. I'll catch up with you in a month or so's time for another edition. Peace.